Hello guys, welcome back to the MMA Sucker channel. Let's talk Brian Ortega. I'm going to break this down into I'd say three separate sections. I'm going to say section 1, we're going to have pre-title shot Brian Ortega. Section 2 is going to be post-title shot Brian Ortega. And then section 3 is what we have now and what is next for Brian Ortega. So, first section, pre-title shot Brian Ortega. Let's not forget, on his UFC debut, he won the fight, he failed a drugs test, and it was overturned to a no contest. And this isn't a failed drug test in that it was a tainted supplement or he made a mistake. He admitted to wrongdoing. So he is, unfortunately, a drug cheat. There's no two ways about it. His second UFC fight, he was down on the scorecards. It was competitive, but he was down on the scorecards until a third round finish for Brian Ortega. Then against Diego Brandao, he was down on the scorecards again, and he pulled off a submission victory in the final round. Against Clay Guida, he won the first round, lost the second round, was on his way to losing the third round until he pulled off that knee knockout to Clay Guida. So now we've got 3 fights, 3 third round finishes, all of which he was down on the scorecards in. Against Renato Moicano, he was down on the scorecards, pulled off a third round submission. So that's now 4 fights that he was down on the scorecards and 4 fights that he's had to pull off a final round submission. He had a competitive fight against Cub Swanson, but did actually pull off the submission in the second round, and then he finished Frankie Edgar in round 1. Then came the title shot against Max Holloway. And for those of you that remember this fight and are fans of Brian Ortega, you won't remember this fight too kindly. He was dominated in this fight, really badly beaten, despite being the favourite heading into the bout. From what I can remember, the original bout got cancelled because of concussion-like symptoms for Max Holloway, but Max Holloway landed 307 strikes in that title fight, 290 of which were significant strikes. Brian Ortega had no answer for the ability, the striking of Max Holloway. So now that's kind of section 1. Apart from maybe you could say the Frankie Edgar fight, although as it only kind of went just under a round, I'd say that he didn't dominate that fight. Same with the Cub Swanson fight, that went sort of a round and a half. He was being outstruck in that fight. Cub Swanson landed 60 strikes to Brian Ortega's 24, but Brian Ortega did pull off the finish. He was more than deserving of a title shot, of course, but he is yet to actually dominate a fight until he returned after the Max Holloway title fight loss. So this is kind of section 2, post-title fight, or post-first title fight, should we say. He returned to face Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, and he put on a clinic. He outboxed, outstruck, and completely dominated the Korean Zombie, knocking him down twice, taking him down 3 times. He just absolutely battered the Korean Zombie, who had no answer for Brian Ortega. Taking into account this is Brian Ortega that's coming off a 2-year layoff due to a torn ACL. He outstruck Korean Zombie 127 to 62 in significant strikes and scored 50-45 on all scorecards. This, in my humble opinion, is the first fight that we've seen Brian Ortega dominate. Taking into account that he's already had a title shot and he's 8 fights in. That was his 9th UFC fight. That is the first time we've actually seen him dominate a fight. Then he got a second title shot, and it's clear that the UFC like Brian Ortega and are putting him in these title shots possibly undeservedly. Coming off one, yes, it was a dominant and it was his best victory, most impressive victory to date against Korean Zombie. Brian Ortega gets his second title shot against Alexander Volkanovski this time. He was dominated in this fight as well. And although he had his moment when he almost choked Volkanovski out, he was dominated. Again, significant strikes for Volkanovski, 214, for Brian Ortega, 88. The scorecards in this one, all in favour of the champion, 49-46, 50-45 and 50-44. Dominated. Absolutely dominated. And that, as of yet, is his final ever title shot. He would return against Yair Rodriguez in a loss. It was a TKO. Technically, it was due to a injury. He would then rebound fairly well, and it probably put in his best performance to date against Yair Rodriguez. Although he was dropped in that fight, he did come back to score the finish in the third round. That was a 5-round co-main event. However, he did submit Yair Rodriguez. So that is a really, really good performance and a good win on his record for Brian Ortega. And then we've got the UFC 303 debacle, where Brian Ortega was scheduled to face Diego Lopez. The night before weigh-ins, Brian Ortega decided that he was not going to be able to make weight and requested a weight change to lightweight. So from 145 to 155 pounds. That was accepted for Diego Lopez, who had already made 146 pounds supposedly. So he had to put on 10 pounds. Only then, on having weighed in, ceremonial weigh-in, everything, on fight night, Brian Ortega pulled out and was replaced by Dan Ige. So he changed the weight class that he was going to fight in. He made Diego Lopez cut down to 145, put the weight back onto 155, then a change of opponent for Diego Lopez. Fair play to Diego Lopez, just yes, I'll do this, yes, I'll do it. And that's probably why Diego Lopez got a title shot eventually. You know, he's a yes man for the UFC. The two did eventually meet, however, at UFC 306 in the Sphere. I think that was a co-main event. I can double check that. Oh no, sorry, it was. We had Murad versus Sean O'Malley as a main event. We had Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso as a co-main, and then Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega. Again, he was dominated by Diego Lopez in that fight. 106 significant strikes to just 63 in favor of Lopez. Lopez all but knocked him out in that first round. I think he almost knocked him out and then woke him back up with the strikes that he landed, Diego Lopez, which was, you know, you could say that was unlucky for Lopez or lucky for Ortega, whichever way you want to see it. But the scorecards on that night, 30-27, 30-27, 30-26, all in favour of Diego Lopez. And then we have this past weekend, co-main event against the former bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. Again, there's weight issues for Brian Ortega. Taking into account that Brian Ortega was told, or had told fans and the media and the UFC by the sounds of it, that he was voluntarily moving up to lightweight. He was taking on the former bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling, and a few days before the fight, in a 5-round co-main event, so take into account 5 rounds, he told the bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling, "Look, I'm not," or the former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling. Yes, he's a fully fledged featherweight now. Sorry, but he told Aljamain Sterling, "Look, I'm not going to be able to make 145. Can we move it up? Can we have a catch weight? 153." So he's making the smaller man move up in weight, only to be absolutely dominated again by Aljamain Sterling. 50-45 on all scorecards. Completely unsuccessful in the striking, completely unsuccessful in the wrestling. Remember, the sort of jiu-jitsu game is supposed to be Brian Ortega's game. Aljamain took him down and dominated him at will whenever he wanted to. The first round, taking into account, again, you have to remember, you have to have this in the back of your mind, that Brian Ortega asked Aljamain Sterling, "Look, come up another 10 pounds and weigh in at 153. He landed 2 strikes in the first round. In the second round, he landed 9 strikes. So he's landed a total of 11 strikes in 10 minutes. His output was shocking, to be honest. And he lost that fight to Aljamain Sterling. Now, he is in a difficult position. Brian Ortega is in a difficult position because he now has to he's certainly out of favour with the UFC, I believe, now. He's ranked number 7, and I do believe that he's out of favour with the UFC, because why wouldn't he be? He's been unprofessional for his past couple of fights, amending the weight at UFC 303, then pulling out of the fight, then going in there against Diego Lopez. It is what it is. He got dominated in that fight. Then almost pulling out of the fight against Aljamain Sterling in Shanghai. Then being the output in the first 2 rounds in Shanghai, and then being dominated. He's going to be out of favour with the UFC, and I don't see him, bouncing back too easily. But what is next for Brian Ortega? First of all, he's dropped down two places in the ranking, so he's now ranked number 7 in the featherweight division. For me, I think that's irrelevant. I simply don't think that he will ever and should ever be allowed to fight at featherweight again, because he cannot be trusted. There's proof he cannot be trusted to make 145 pounds. So let's put him at number 7, or let's put him top 10 in the lightweight division. I think there's some tough fights for him in the lightweight division, of which many of them are not favourable matchups. Joel Alvarez, Grant Dawson, Benoit Saint-Denis, Michael Chandler, Renato Moicano rematch perhaps. All potentials. Rafael Fiziev, that would be a fun fight. Striker versus, traditional grappler, but I think Rafael Fiziev absolutely pieces him up. Benil Dariush perhaps, Mateus Gamrot, and then you're getting into the kind of upper echelons with the Paddy Pimblets, Dan Hookers, Justin Gaethjes, of which he doesn't deserve to be at 155 pounds. He's in a very difficult position, Brian Ortega, and I can see him being in a position where he kind of welcomes people to the division. I'm just going to go on the Tapology lightweight rankings. I know he's not ranked at lightweight, and rightfully so, but I can see him being the kind of person that is now welcoming people to the UFC, which is not a place that anybody wants to be in. You're welcoming the young killers to the UFC, but unfortunately that's the kind of position that he's got himself into. Should he get a ranked fighter at lightweight next, I personally don't think he deserves a ranked fighter. I think that he should be fighting people just on the edge of the ranks. I mean, Bobby Green could be a fun fight if and when he gets fit. Drakkar Closer coming off the win against Edson Barboza could be a fun fight. Michael Johnson on a 3-fight winning run could be a good fight. Nasrat Haqparas, on the edge of a ranking. He's on a 5-fight winning run, so I think that one makes a lot of sense. Alexander Hernandez on a 3-fight winning streak as of last weekend. I think that one the weekend before last. Sorry, I think that one makes a lot of sense. So Brian Ortega is in a sticky situation, but what do we do with Brian Ortega next? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you next time.